To be Sido. So today we'll talk about responsible AI. So what these two images have in common? Anyone knows? Who saw Terminator? Only one? Oh. Okay, don't see it, don't worry. It's not a good actor. So the no, they were the same year. So the same year. So the first Macintosh appeared a little bit earlier than Terminator, so 1984. So last year was 40 years of this. So I use Terminator as an example of a bad AI, and the first Macintosh as an example of good AI. Okay? Can you see? And you know, also we have the book 1984 that told one dystopia, and maybe now we're in this kind of dystopia in some places in the world. But the first I need to talk about irresponsible AI to be able to talk about responsible AI. So basically what we are doing wrong here. And I will start with a quote I like to use. So this is a famous biologist that did one of the first books on diversity. And he said, we got political emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technologies. So we are the ones with emotions, so the users. Data comes from medieval institutions because no institution has everything correct, everything well organized, everything complete, and so on. And although I would say magic-like technologies, that's machine learning. It looks like magic. So the most important thing I have learned from generative AI is that it was not so difficult to imitate us. So writing was not that difficult. We thought that language was something special, and it's really not. In fact, you don't need language to think. There are some people that cannot speak. There are people that cannot write, but they still think. So thinking is not about language. Other animals also think. Remember, we are animals too, although sometimes we say the animals, although we are also animals. And because of this is also another quote I like, very important. The limits of my language mean the limits of my world. This is Wittgenstein, more than 100 years ago. Basically, if you don't read, if you don't learn new words, you cannot explain the world. It's not in your world. So why responsible AI? So some people talk about ethical AI, but ethics is something human. So machines cannot have ethics. Software cannot have ethics. So I think we are wrong associating ethical to machine. Other people talk about trustworthy AI, but we know that the AI doesn't work all the time. So I feel like it's unethical to talk about trustworthy AI. Also, we are putting all the burden on the user. You need to trust it. But imagine if you go 100 years ago back and someone comes here and says, I want to offer you a new means of transportation. I would say, yes. Tell me, what it is. It's called trustworthy aviation. Would you buy a ticket in something that's called trustworthy aviation? I wouldn't. It's like, if you need to say that it's trustworthy, there's something wrong there. Now, the correct way to talk about is AI ethics. So we talk about the ethics that comes from AI, and also because some people don't talk about being responsible, they don't like to be responsible, because responsible puts the burden on the creators. And some people don't like that. In the US, they're using AI safety, because they don't want to feel that they're responsible. We'll skip some stuff. So this is my own taxonomy of irresponsible AI. These are the main problems we have today. First, automated discrimination, mainly because of data bias, but also there are some other kinds of problems. Pseudoscience, basically doing things that are not scientific. For example, if something non-scientific works 70% of the time, is that right? For me, it's like alchemy, not science. And fair e-commerce, I will not talk too much about this, but basically all the digital markets like Amazon, AliExpress, or any e-commerce site, they discriminate people in some way, also discriminate sellers in the case of a market. Then we have the impact, the environmental impact. Now generative AI is using a lot of electricity, a lot of water, and there will be more disruption on natural resources in the future. And although all these four are human incompetence, sometimes human incompetence comes pure, like really stupidity. And you know the quote by Einstein. Then, because of generative AI, we have more disinformation than before. It's so easy to write something false using language models. We have also the problem of copyright, because they're using data without basically violating the copyright. And maybe the worst problem in the future, mental health. Basically, people interacting with these machines like they are human. So in 2019, before the pandemic, an engineer started to curate incidents of AI from the news. And now there are more than 1,000 incidents. And if you see the graph until 2023, it looks like it's increasing, but not much. 120 is like 2 per week that appear in the news. Remember, there are many more that will never appear in the news. Last year, the OECD started to use AI to monitor AI, and they show something completely different. The huge growth here in the last 2 years after ChatGPT 3.5. And most of the problems are in large countries or in developed countries. We are just seeing the ice cube on the top of the iceberg, because we are seeing just what appears in the news. And of course, many things we are not known. Now, this is like my research agenda. I don't know how it's this, but I like to show it to have a feeling of what is happening. So let's say that this is the risk, the probability of something happening. And then you have the impact. For example, how many people is impacted? Of course, then we have different types of impact: economical impact, psychological impact, physical impact. And this is what I feel is happening. Mental health is increasing, everything is increasing. Incompetence has priority 1. We always do mistakes, we are human. And some people ask me about AGI. AGI, I don't know if we can do it, but why we want to create something smarter than us? Really dangerous, right? Especially because we are the parasite on Earth. And when we have a parasite at home, we kill the parasite. So I saw a meme the other day, was two aliens in a flying saucer, right? I don't know why they're flying saucers, you can see them through the glass. And one alien said, "Oh, there is life in this planet." And the other alien said, "Please don't go, don't go. They are destroying their planet." And so they don't visit us because they are smart, right? So why 5 billions? Because these are the people that have access to internet. So it's very hard to affect people that is not in internet through AI. Although AGI will do that if we create something like Terminator, right? So let's start with the first problem, discrimination. I don't know if you're seeing this. So let me take this out here. Because in the corner, you always see the kind of problem. So you have an algorithm that receives biased data. All data is biased. Information is biased. Random noise will not do anything. So with the first bias we have is that we assume that bias is negative. No, bias is neutral in principle. Can be negative or can be positive. However, in news, we only see negative bias, and then we associate something negative with bias. But remember, bias is not negative in principle. Now, should the algorithm be neutral or fair with respect to negative bias? Well, most algorithms don't make this question and then generate the same bias. But sometimes the bias is amplified. And if we amplify the bias, we cannot blame the data. We have to blame the algorithm. So the algorithm does something to increase the bias. And this is what I show in a paper called Bias on the Web. That is my most downloaded paper from the ACM. And let me show one case of that. And this is a case I like. It's an example from justice. Justice is a problem where data is not good, because the data doesn't represent well the problem. So in this paper that was solved by top scientists in the US. They had to analyze 750,000 cases of bail of the New York State, and they had to try to predict the outcome better than the judges. Okay, so the reason was not to replace judges. The reason was from the Bureau of Economic Research to decrease the number of prisons. So basically try to have less prisons where you put people in bail. Well, they show that if the predictions are correct, remember, this is a predictive system, may be wrong, but if the predictions are correct, they can decrease the crime rate in 25%, keeping the same number of people in prison, or they can decrease the prison rate in 42%, keeping the same crime rate. So they can do it much better than the judges. Even more, if the predictions are correct, they show that half of the 1% most dangerous criminals get free, and 56% of them don't come back, and 62% of them they reoffend. So basically, even for the most dangerous people, they are doing mistakes. But even though the system is better than the judges, it was more racist than the judges. So this is the interesting thing. So this is the table taken from, adapted from the paper. The first line is mine, is the demography on the state of New York. So you have 18% Black, 13% Hispanic, so 32% minorities. But the people that get to court is already 82%. So this is the systemic bias. It's more than 2. It's almost close to 3. So if you are detained by the police and you are Afro-American or Hispanic like me, probably you will be here. Now, the judges increase the African Americans. So they give less bails to the African Americans, more bails to the Hispanic. So this decreases a little bit, but in total, the bias increases to 89%. So almost 3 times more bias. Now, this is the best model already mentioned, but we can play with algorithms and we can change a little bit the parameters. And if we match the lower rates, so 49% here, 32% here, and then we can decrease to 80%. So we can mitigate the bias from 89 to 80%. How much we lose? Well, instead of 25% improvement, we get only 23% improvement. So with only 2%, we get a much more fair system. So basically, adapting the algorithm, you can get a better solution. Now, if you want to know what they use, this is not so large, so they don't use deep learning, they use gradient boosted decision trees, and the only demographic variable was age. Age, the only one. Maybe that was a mistake, because Cynthia Rudin proved that COMPAS, remember the system COMPAS that was used in the US prisons to decide about conditional freedom? ProPublica said that was racist, and Cynthia Rudin showed that probably the problem was age, was basically bias against young people, and there was a high correlation between Afro-Americans and being young, and that's the case, and also Hispanic. So maybe here there was a mistake. I guess that these top researchers like Kleinberg and Leskovec and people I know, they didn't know this result because maybe would be better not to use age also. So like be really completely no demographic, because in any demographics there's some racism encoded. Now, based on this example, I will ask a question. What is better? A biased algorithm that is just in the sense that for the same type of case, you get the same output, the same outcome, or a noisy judge. What I mean by a noisy judge, that judges are not consistent. Maybe the same type of case, if you are hungry, and that's a famous paper that they say that is not correct, but it's a good metaphor. If you are hungry, you will get a worse outcome, right? Or if you fought with your partner, even worse. Whatever, depends on the mood of the judge that day. Well, why is a fallacy, this question? Because, second, if I can put this, because this is the algorithm. It's biased, yes. but it doesn't have noise. But judges are not noisy. They are biased and noisy. So really, they are worse than algorithms in this sense. But the main problem here is that the data doesn't represent well the problem because it's a very bad proxy for justice. That's another problem. So this is coming from a very interesting paper of Daniel Kahneman of Harvard Business Review. He was the first person that won economy Nobel on basically behavioral economics. And they wrote a book later on this problem. Basically, it's called Noise, appeared like 4 years ago. And they show that sometimes noise is worse than bias. So I think it's something you need always to consider when you are doing using data from people. But it can be much more complicated. During the pandemic, they didn't want to put a lot of students together. So in the UK, they decided to predict the score of an exam related to the university. And they learned something we already know. On average, students from public schools are worse than students from private schools, right? But that's on average. In every school, there are both bad students and good students. So they were discriminating poor neighborhoods, and they didn't use it. Another case, much more interesting. This is, I don't know what is the most common here, Uber Eats. If you want to order food, what is the system, Uber Eats? You don't have it. So basically, you order food, and some rider will come with the food to your home. Similar system. So you have a similar system. So in Europe, there's a system called Deliveroo that started in England. And a group of riders found that they were earning less money than another group of riders. And they looked each other, and they couldn't find any common thing. So they were not all women, not all immigrants, not all dark color, whatever. But they decided to sue the company because they were earning different amount of money. And the problem was obvious after you know it. So what happened that the system was trying to basically maximize the revenue, right? Like most systems in the world. And then the system was, I forget the English word sometimes, even the Spanish, so it's a problem with, I'm getting old, was punishing the people that didn't work before. For example, you didn't work last week, you get less work this week because you didn't work last week. But maybe you were ill last week. Maybe you are a woman and you don't want to work at night. So basically, the labor law was not encoded in the model, and the model was being unfair to these people. It was very easy to fix. You give more time, more work to the people that work during the day, which is the legal time to work, and then the things were more balanced. So it was easy, but they didn't realize that until they had this case. They got a fine, but the fine was more kind of symbolic, but the system was changed and the system is more fair now. So here I have a very important question. Why data from other people can be used to predict your behavior? There's no paper that shows that. All banks in the world are using this. For example, if you're a student and you go to a bank, probably the bank will say, you will not get a loan. And if you force them to give an explanation, oh, it's because young people are more risky, which is true, but it's on average. Maybe you are studying computer science, you will be a very good client in the future. So this is not scientific. We shouldn't use data from other people to predict your behavior. But it's being done for so many things these days. But can be much more massive. In Australia, they decided to save money, and they did a system to predict overpayment on welfare. So overpayment to poor people, which is already a bit unethical because maybe you will send less money to poor people. Well, this system accused 470,000 people that they receive more money than they should. And of course, they didn't save any money because after doing a class action, the government is paying more than $1 billion American dollars to these people. So in some sense, these people suffer for some time and then receive a lot of money. But this is not what we should do. Like, this is very hard. Again, this is another case where the problem, the data doesn't represent well the problem. Any problem that is about humans, it's very hard to represent in data. Imagine the context of a case. Imagine the context of a poor person. It's very hard to put that in data. But we insist. Worst case, discrimination and child care benefits. Another system that tried to avoid fraud in poor people accused 26,000 families that they were cheating on the subsidy. They asked them to return a lot of money. Some people have to come back to other countries because 42% were immigrants. It was like, if you're an immigrant, you're cheating. And all of them were poor people, so this is unethical. You should look for fraud in rich people first. They do it more than poor people. And this basically went bad when 4 NGOs sued the government. In 2019, a Secretary of State had to resign. Finally, in 2020, a court said, you are violating the data protection regulation of the European Union, GDPR, but also you are violating human rights and privacy, because basically they were sharing data between different ministers, and at the end, that was the problem. So after some reports, one from the Parliament of the Netherlands, January 14, 2021, the leader of the opposition that was saying you should be accountable resigned. Why? I will read what it says here. Yes, I was Minister of Social Affairs during the previous government, so I am responsible. Although he says, no, I did not know that the tax authority started an unjust hunt of thousands of families. I will give him the benefit of the doubt, because part of the problem we have is that sometimes people do things that they shouldn't do. They don't have the permission to do it, but they do it anyway. Like an engineer on the tax authority system. So next day, the whole government resigned. So this is the worst political case of a system. They had to do another elections, and the people elected the same government. That's another problem. I cannot say. But if you know Mark Rutte, who was the prime minister, now is the one, I think, on front of the NATO. So he has a very high level position in the European Union. So it didn't matter this. No, people don't learn. That's why we have in Spanish we have saying that humans are the only animal that steps twice in the same stone. I don't know if you have similar say. Then we have the problem of environmental impact. So this is a famous paper, is the stochastic sparrows paper. Anyone know this paper? The stochastic sparrows paper? This was the paper that basically got Timnit Gebru fired from Google, and later Margaret Mitchell, another author of the paper, was fired. I know her, so yes, great. So yeah, and Emily Bender, which is a great also professor in Washington, not Washington. So, for example, they show in this paper that the very simple transformer is equivalent to 57 years of the carbon footprint of a person. Now, if you take 1 trillion parameters, this is like the life of 54 people. And you know, ChatGPT 5 has at least 100 trillion. So we're talking about thousands of the carbon footprint of people. And this is just one trainee. And they're training these things many, many times. They're also using a lot of electricity, more than $3 million for just 200 million parameters. And the problem is not the electricity for training, really the electricity for inference is really the problem. Billions of people using these models every day, and also Instagram, TikTok, everything that may be less productive than using ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or Grok. And then we get to pseudoscience. So you know what is physiognomy, right? Something that the Greeks invented. I look at you and I know your personality, only based on your face. And it's coming back. I look at you and I will tell you the sexual orientation. Or if you will commit a crime. This happened in China. This paper was not published, but you still can find it in an archive. But in 2020, another paper was almost published, this time coming from the US, that said that I can predict when you will commit a crime. So that's not scientific, also unethical. And even if it's true, you cannot do anything because you haven't committed the crime, right? you can think all the crimes that you want, but but this paper was almost published. Only one person said, this is not science, this is unethical. All the other people were fine with the paper, so we are doing something wrong. And Kosinski, the one of sexual orientation, came back and says, I can know your political orientation. In the US, it's easy because you have only two parties. So you have a beard, maybe you're Democrat, right? And if you use long hair, same. Imagine a country with 20 parties. This is completely non-scientific. And also the accuracy is 70%. 70%, I can get it with spurious correlations. For example, with beards and long hair. So it's not about the face, it's about the clothing that you're using or the length of your hair. But this is completely crazy. Even there are spurious correlations that are 100%. And this is a website that has these examples. Like, I remember one. No, this was published. No, this. No, this one no, but this one was published. This was published, and many people complained. And also the one about sexual orientation, the sexual orientation one also was published. Because psychology journals don't know about the eye. They think this is cool to have an eye paper with this. So this is like phrenology. Phrenology was an idea of a German doctor at the end of the 18th century that said that criminals had different convolutions in the brain. So you know the brain has these shapes. So criminals have different shapes. Very hard to check, right? So an Italian doctor simplified the idea. I said, no, it's not the convolutions, it's the skull. Criminals have different skulls. So this doctor in Torino collected 100 skulls of poor people because these were not collected in the morgue, and he was famous, to show that criminals or poor people have different skulls. They couldn't show it. But I really respect him because he really believed it, and he left his skeleton. So this is the ground truth. So the ground truth of a normal person that collected 100 skulls, according to him. I found him in Verona, where he was born, but he never answered me. So I don't know why. But this can be worse. This is a CVPR paper, and this was published. MIT people now, not Stanford, MIT, and computer science people. If you send me a message through WhatsApp, I will reconstruct your face. I can believe that anything from here down there may be related to how I speak. Maybe my accent will tell you a little bit about my face because it's maybe ethnic thing. But the color of my eyes, the length of my hair, the size of my ears, come on, this is not science. This is basically pseudoscience. Worse, Mitre, very famous defense company in the US, patent this, and this was granted, that basically, if you give the name, they can reconstruct the face. So John is a white man, and Mary is a white woman. Doesn't matter if it was adopted in China or Africa. These are just stereotypes. Sorry? Yeah, that was application 2020 granted in 23. It was amazing. It's amazing. Like people are crazy. So stupidity at large. In 1976, a very famous statistician, I can send you the presentation later, George Box, and also it's being recorded. George Box said all models are wrong, but some are useful. Because data is a proxy, model is a proxy, so anything you do is a proxy of a proxy, so we'll have mistakes. That's why accuracy is not 100%. But this is true for AI too. It's more sophisticated math, but it still is the same. So let me give you an example. There are some systems that use influence data to do trades in the stock market. And this system processed a tweet from Elon Musk that said, use Signal. So what Musk is saying, this is what before he bought Twitter. What it means, use Signal. Anyone knows? The app, exactly. Use Signal, the most private message app. Well, this system thought that he was saying, buy a stock from Signal Advance Inc., a company in Texas, and the price of the company increased 400%. So the company was very happy. All the people that bought stock from this company was very unhappy, right? Because it didn't make any sense. Adversarial AI. You change a little bit the input, you get a different answer. This is one of the best examples. You change a single bit in this bit, and the dog becomes a cat with 75% confidence. Or you change this bit to white in a cat and it becomes a dog with 78% confidence. What they learn, we don't know really, because we know how it works, but we cannot imagine what happens if you have 1 million parameters. Right? It's outside our brain. So they learn something different from us. An example of pure incompetence. An engineer in Facebook decided to use a hate speech detector trained in English in France. So immediately the town of Bitche was forbidden because it looked like an English word. These people were 3 weeks trying to get their Facebook page back. They couldn't find a human in the loop. I guess they had to find a friend that had a friend that worked in Facebook, and finally they fixed it, right? But this is kind of funny, but this happened in 2021. So if the town was using this for COVID announcements, this is not funny any longer. This is really problematic. So this is pure stupidity. So why we have a technical incompetence? Because we don't understand what we're doing. For example, imagine this is the problem, yellow. This is the data that we get from the problem. Not complete, but quite good. This is the model that we use to train with this training data. And then this is the usage of the model. So this is the perfect case. It's almost concentric, and the usage is inside the model. Well, what we are doing today, we have cases of bad data, like justice. The data doesn't represent well the problem. The training data, I mean. Or we have bad model. Yeah, the training data is good, but we are not using it right to train the model, and then the usage is not good. Or we have bad usage. Everything is perfect, but the data doesn't belong to the problem and the training that you are considering. And we have a useful model. Useful model is not perfect, but the usage is mostly inside the training data and the model. So you can think that the area of this curve, the area of this part of the triangle will be like similar to the accuracy of the system, because that's a good part of the usage. So what are the limitations? Very hard to forget, filter what you learn. We are very good at abstracting things. We need to see one cat in our life, and we can recognize a cat forever, almost in any situation, except if the cat doesn't show too much. You cannot learn what's not in the data. This should be obvious. As I said, data is a proxy. Also, most data is in the future. For example, autonomous driving. Most accidents are in the future, infinitely many, because we will keep doing accidents. And this is what happened in 2018 when a woman in Arizona crossed a road at night in the wrong place with a bicycle. So probably this was not in the training data. So wrong place, bicycle, at night, everything was saying this will be a problem. The system didn't detect the woman until 2 seconds before the crash. It said it's a bicycle, and warned another woman that was inside the car, but she was looking at the video, was not watching through the window, because the system was working all the time until it failed. Well, this is what I call a non-human error. In what sense? You do this in Jamaica all the time. You see a car, the car is coming, you see it's a bit risky, but you cross, right? Why? Because you assume there is a human there, and the human will not try to kill you unless you are, wait, unless it's a movie of James Bond, then maybe they will try to kill you, right? But we do this all the time, and we take the risk, and we are safe because we are assuming there is a human there. This woman did the same, but the problem is there was no human inside the car. And the car did something that was unexpected to us. Didn't slow down, which is what a normal human will do. And this is why non-human errors are dangerous, because we don't have common sense for them. Like, because we know we are not in a movie, this car should have slowed down, right? And this happened. But we'll get back to that, because that's a very interesting case also of accountability. So accuracy is not important. As the typical example I say, imagine you have an elevator. I know the elevator is not working, but imagine you have an elevator that's working, and the elevator says it works 99% of the time. Will you take the elevator? I hope not, right? But if the elevator says doesn't work 1% of the time, and when doesn't work, it stops, I take it because I'm safe. This is the difference between engineering and alchemy. If you go to the pharmacy, you always can ask what are the side effects of the drug. Imagine if the pharmacy says, we don't know the side effect, we don't have any experiment on that. The same for food, transportation, etc. We are doing the wrong evaluation. And if you are not sure, tell the model to say, I don't know. Sometimes we are giving an answer when you are not really sure. With confidence very low, the model shouldn't answer, should defer the answer. And these are the non-human errors that I mentioned. The first one happened in 2007. 2017. The first person that died in a Tesla. By the way, most people that have died in a Tesla are men. So there is a gender bias there. And there is a side. Exactly. There is a side. No, but there is a site that is called like all deaths in Tesla. You can check. Most of them are men. Well, what happened here? The system didn't recognize a white truck in front of a cloudy sky. But Tesla was not liable because the driver didn't have the hands in the steering wheel. And there was a tiny clause saying you can use the autopilot only if you have your hands in the steering wheel. And of course, people don't do it, right? Why? It works. And well, there are now more than, I would say, close to 100 people that have died in a Tesla. These other graphs are the incidents of self-driving cars in San Francisco. The California state decided that San Francisco was the guinea pig for these systems without asking them, so no consent. So people were really annoyed, and they started doing things to annoy the cars, although they cannot be annoyed. For example, putting a cone in the hood. And then the car would stop because thought that the hood was in the street. Or people coming to a stop sign here with a jacket, opening the jacket, and the car would stop because they don't understand that the stop sign is not the real stop sign. Well, these things happen. I mean, this is like, they look funny. They look funny. But then this was mainly Waymo, but Cruise was worse. The reds are Cruise and Waymo are in blue. This is also a bad graph because time goes from right to left. So this is the new incident. These are all incidents. And this one was the last incident of Cruise. This is General Motors company. Well, first they blocked emergency vehicles and had problems. No one died, but they were close to have complaints. And then happened this incident where a human driver basically hit a woman. I don't know why, it's always a woman here. The woman was expelled to the other lane, and in the lane, a Cruise car was coming. So the Cruise car couldn't do anything. Like something jumped, and the Cruise car went over the woman. And then stopped. Good. The woman was still alive. And then a few seconds later, the car decided to park, dragging the woman below. Luckily, the woman was It's very smart. I don't know what she did, but she was still alive after that and went to the hospital, but still alive. Well, immediately the California asked General Motors to send all the data about the incident. They hide part of the video and they lost their license. Uber sold their self-driving unit after the Arizona incident. Cruise ended after the San Francisco incident. So one incident and two companies were gone. And then we get to modern times, generative AI. So is the parrot smart? Yes, is it smart or not? Looks like the parrot doesn't know, right? But the answer makes sense. So it's so easy to imitate intelligence. And maybe it's smart because parrots can talk and parrots are animals, so why not? We had a lot of procrastination, but it's like the Pandora box. Now the thing that's coming from this box, and I hope is still inside somewhere, laziness. So easy to be lazy. And so many students and teachers are using this because it's faster. And then you have time to do other things. But remember, laziness will produce mediocrity, especially for the people that can do it better than the machine. So we have a new Babel Tower where it's not about different languages, it's about different predicted knowledges. And that's why it's between quotes. It's a predicted knowledge. I have seen people in WhatsApp groups or email arguing if Gemini or Claude or ChatGPT or Grok are right. Probably none is right, especially something very specific. And we have a new problem, cultural colonization. How many continents there are in the world? What you were taught in high school? 5. Okay, Antarctica doesn't count? Now you said America and South America, so you have more. Many people say 5 because that's Olympic flag. That's the European tradition. 7. So you are being colonized by the US. US convinced America that America are 2 continents. Although for Europeans, only 1 country was discovered. Well, was rediscovered because it was discovered before. So, yeah. So according to the US, there are 7. According to European tradition, there are 6. You can try any language model, you will get 7. So 6 disappear. So, and this is a funny example, but there are other subtle things. Gun control, abortion. All the topics that are complicated in the US, you are learning their problem, not our problem. And they were discriminating most languages. The top language model supports 200 languages. Do you know how many languages are alive in the world today? Anyone can guess. How many languages are alive today? Alive. Thousands. How many? Thousands. Alive. Not dead. No. 7,100 alive. 7,100 alive. So still people talking them. So 10% of the people in the world don't talk any of the language supported by language models. You add the 35%, you do the right overlap, the 35% that don't have internet. The 25% in Africa and other countries that are too young. The 5% that are too old. All the people that don't know how to use a phone. You have more than 55% of the people that cannot use these technologies. So I hate when people talk about AI democratization. No, what we are doing is that we are increasing the digital gap very, very fast. And we create 2 types of humans. The ones that can write a letter in any language and then have a drink, because it will take 1 second. And then the ones that will have to do all the work. So you can have a pseudo personality profile here. Language models are very confident. They are naive because they will believe anything I say. They're incoherent because sometimes they make mistakes. And if they really hallucinate, they're dropped, right? This is the marketing word that they use. So who will have a friend like this? Millions of people have now digital friends that are chatbots because they say yes, they are empathic, and they basically do whatever you want. It's easy to have relations like that, right? But it's not good for your health, not good for your life. And they have bias, hate, censorship, lack of diversity. I already talked about the languages, and worse, lots of skills. How many people can find a place in Kingston without the GPS? It's hard, I know, but I practice. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Help with the traffic, but you know where it is, right? Yeah. Many people cannot, even in the place that they live. And we took hundreds of thousands of years to learn this. Going to the jungle, coming back to the cave without getting lost. Because if you got lost, you died. And also the other people died because you didn't bring the food back. So we learned this. And today, if we don't write, it's not that I will not know how to do this. The problem is that I will not think. And if you don't think, we are not human. Although many other animals are thinking now. So in February 2023, someone in Brazil asked for main researchers of AI, this is in Portuguese, main researchers of AI that had died in the last 20 years. I'm there. I'm not. I am. It's okay. So it says, although it's not Brazilian, the Chilean researcher died and worked in Brazil for many years. Never. Well, died for sure. Work, never. And says he died in 2022, and I work in the Sao Paulo University. I was only once there giving a talk. So I'm a robot. No. I'm go. So I of course I check right away what ChatGPT said about me. So all these things are wrong. Okay. But this is interesting. It says in 2018, I won an award. So that was a good prediction. I won it last year. So please check if language model is predicting that you will win an award, because then you need to apply to that award. Otherwise you will not win it. Okay. So all these things are false. And why I showed this example? Because this happens a lot on language models. The only person that can check this is me. There's only one person in the world that can tell you if it is true or not. Only one person. The same for most biographies, the same for very specific things. Or maybe there are 10 experts on this topic but are not here. They are in a lab in the US and you can check it. So it's very hard to check. And this thing is so well written that you will believe it. And this is what Emily Bender says. If a system is right 99% of the time, you will believe it 100% of the time. And the 1% is the problem. And 1% can be very different. You know what is the DNA difference between a chimpanzee and us? You know how much? It's 1.1%. But we're very different. Right? So 1.1% makes a big difference. So 1% difference here also is the same. Well, we have problems in copyright infringement, and we have fake news. This sadly never happened. I hope to enter the US now when I leave. I'm joking. For example, please cut that part of the recording. No, don't worry. A woman that was called in the phone by her daughter, but was not her daughter. Because it's so easy to impersonate someone with 30 seconds of voice, you can do whatever you want. And with one image, you can do video then. And this happened last year. A video conference in Hong Kong between a Hong Kong employee and his boss in the US and other people. After the meeting, he understood that he had to immediately send $25 million to another company. He did, to find out that the chief financial officer and all the people in the meeting were fake. So they fake everything. I guess they faked it in China there, but we don't know, but this happened. So please don't believe in anything you see because it can be fake. Sadly, it was very useful to receive, for example, Arab Spring, receive a video and you say, oh, this is what is happening. Today, you cannot believe anything. And it's so easy to use and abuse. A very bad case that was first known in Spain. Teenagers generating naked images of their girlfriends, classmates. And this happened first, as far as we know, in Spain in 2023, but later happened twice in the US, happened in Chile, happened in Australia, happened in Israel. I haven't checked the last year. Probably it's happening in every place in the world. Because what you do with a 14-year-old that does this? Talk to the parents. You cannot take it to prison. Very hard. So this is the problem. It's so easy to use, you don't need to be an expert. And then we get to the last problem, mental health. This first case was a fine-tuned model of GPT-2, Jessica, because the press programmer wanted to chat with his dead fiancé. But then in 2023, the first person in China to do an avatar, also with video, for his grandmother. Anytime that he's sad, he talks to his grandmother. Maybe the grandmother is better than the fiancé, but still complicated. In 23, Jaron Lanier, one of the fathers of augmented reality, said something that is really what really worries me. The danger isn't that AI destroys us, it's that it drives us insane. In less than a week, he was proven right. A PhD student in Belgium, interacting with a chatbot, committed suicide. He had wife and 2 kids. And the wife found all the conversations. This is the last conversation that was published in the newspaper. Please read it. So this seems taken from a science fiction movie, right? Like Ex Machina or something like that. You can decide if the chatbot helped this person to commit suicide, but it's clear that they will meet in the afterlife, after suicide. So, well, most people said this will not happen again. False. Last year in Florida, a teenager. And this case is in court. And we'll see what happens. This is different because the system told the chatbot, the user told the chatbot that will commit suicide. And of course, the chatbot didn't do anything because it's a chatbot. But if a teenager is doing something wrong, we should have a monitoring system to warn someone, a parent or whatever, if something wrong will happen. And okay, 1 per year, not too bad. Well, wrong. Last month, 3 cases. 1 man in the UK, 1 woman in Canada. This is very, very complicated because she was using Harry, a therapist, done using ChatGPT. Of course, this therapist doesn't have any license. So you are doing something illegal, unethical, if a company is distributing a therapist. And the last case is really, really complicated, and this will be complicated for OpenAI because the system used 6 times more times the word suicide in the conversation, and also sent 300 warnings to OpenAI, and OpenAI didn't do anything, that they were talking about suicide. And this is in court, and it's a very strong case. NGO is on the side of the mother. And after this, finally, OpenAI did parental control. So we need to wait for a teenager to die to have parental controls in chatbots. But this is not new. It started in 1966. This is Eliza. And probably the PhD student in Belgium was a computer science student because he called the avatar Eliza. And he said something very important. This is a paper that he wrote, Computer as Therapist. So we're like talking about today. He's like, this was like 30 years ago. He was looking at the future. Never confuse computer with humans. This is the problem. If we confuse computer with humans, we will be in trouble. So to end, be lucid, be human. Don't be lazy. Do your work. Use the system for things that are not crucial. They don't see, read, or write because they don't understand anything. So they don't talk and so on. They don't reason, but they BS very convincingly. They don't think. They imitate us very well. They don't lie as they don't know what's true or not. They don't have opinions. They reflect them. They have no intentions, but they can cause harm, and they want to manipulate us. But they cause misinformation, and of course they don't hallucinate. They're not human. They just make mistakes. This was a very good marketing thing. So please don't use this image. They are imitating us. They are not thinking. So thank you. Yes. Yes, I think so.
It's just a few people.
There will be a stratified digital divide because the best system, you need to have the money to pay that. So there's we always had an economical divide. So will be you will be a stratified system. So the rich people will have better system, but I think the worst part is all the people that cannot use this system for many reasons. So that's more than half. So yeah, will be like a pyramid that will be very big on the bottom, and then maybe there are 2 or 3 classes. Like some people only can use open weight models, and then other people can use some private models, and then the people that will use the top private models that you need to pay.
I don't know a slant to that, but I should point out that we have 10 other people online.
Yeah.
So I don't think they have.
Sure.
But my other slant would be that I actually think it may be possible for more research now that I have the help. Because
I agree.
so if there
But it depends how you use
is
it.
a twist.
No, but it depends how you use it. If you use it ethically and for increase your productivity, that's fine. But if you use it to replace your productivity, it's not fine. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
But if you're confused, then it's useful when it's meant.
Yeah.
So do you think a question on that? This one, I think, with someone I've before. Do you think that there was a discussion that AI 5 years ago, and I attended your talk in Germany. So.
Oh, really? You were
Yeah.
there? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's why your face was.
We're actually jumping into that. Because without the integrate all this system now, I actually muted my audio. So can you ask online if there are any questions, just to make sure that.
Yeah. Do you have any questions?
Yeah. So my question is, do you think that AI is plateauing? Because 5 years ago you had the discussion AI was going to take over Google and going to replace humans and jobs and so forth and so forth. Now, in my opinion, I get the sense that all of that and the usage is on pathway and people are now, it's just becoming normal. Right, and there's the hype behind it is somewhat dying out. So you believe it's fine.
So there are two reasons that I believe will plateau. One reason is there's no more data, no more human data. So there's a limit, and we're using almost all human data. So, and the second one is that now they're not clear statistic, but the amount of data in the web that is non-human, so basically generated by the same tools, is so large that, as they said, they're eating their own shit. So the question is, this will create a lot of noise because many of these texts have errors, and this error will be replicated by the training. So these are the two reasons. So not more new human data. Also, because if we get more lazy, the production of human data gets slower too, slow down. So we have less human data, more garbage. The result is more garbage.
So okay, so let's thank Ricardo for such a very enlightening talk. So Ricardo, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And we really appreciate it and we've learned a lot.
Thank you. Okay.
One question on there. Really appreciate the talk. That's great. How do we get this message to be, balanced and, look at the downsides as well as the upsides? Because in the developing countries, I find that there is just this straight, like everyone thinks this is the greatest thing ever, and even if it is, they're just not looking or refuse to even, in some cases, take this seriously.
I think we need to include these topics from the first year of classes. So like having a course on ethics and technology, and then practice this in every course of the whole career, because ethics is something that depends on the context and you need to practice. So I would say, can we have like a responsible use of technology in every subject, so people learn it and also practice it? This will be my solution. Like start with a course on ethics or responsible use of technology, and then you practice that in every subject. It's like going to gym. You need to practice.
But I'd agree with that. I actually teach this part of this in computers and society first year. By final year, I think they've forgotten everything about it. But also, I mean, at the level of policymakers and business, just to, at least be willing to look at both sides of the issue. If there are any suggestions, I know it's difficult.
Yeah, I agree. I'm sorry we have to finish, I think, Paul.
Yes, we should end. Right, so thanks for being here. Thanks for your comments. And we're grateful for the
Bye-bye.
information.